we're super excited. We've had a bunch of vendors on over the course of the last few months. We're going to switch gears. And we've got really, I think the best story in terms of a practitioner out there setting up a low code development program. It's so good that we're actually going to do this over the course of 2 episodes. So if you haven't hit the subscribe button, this is the week to do it, because we're going to do this over the course of the next 2 weeks. You don't want to miss part 2. Hit the share button, hit the like button, and get your friends involved. Hopefully by now you recognize me. I'm Rob Koplowitz. It's such a great guest today that I wore grown-up clothes. I didn't wear a silly shirt. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. Pass things over to my co-host, John Rymer. How are you, John?
Very well. Excited to be here, and 100% on everything you said about this episode. We're very excited. So I'm John Rymer, of Analysis.Tech now, former Forrester analyst and Waller Forrester. I, with a colleague, Clay Richardson, coined the term low code and spent about 8 years researching this movement and this really revolution. And one of the big topics didn't start out this way. We started out focused on developers, but one of the big topics that we researched became business people building applications, contributing to applications, building them themselves, maintaining them, all of the above. And we think this is a real a key aspect of the low-code movement. And I'm absolutely thrilled today that we will be discussing this topic with Paul Kobylnaski from Shell. Shell, I read some time ago, started reading articles about Shell's program they call DIY, you see on Paul's shirt, and the incredible organization that they had built up to empower business people at Shell to contribute to the automation at the company. And so I when I started reading these articles, I said, we gotta get Paul on the podcast. And so, Paul, welcome. We are so thrilled to have you here and to be able to discuss this very, very important topic with you. Paul, I wonder if you could help the audience understand your background, how you came to the role of running this sprawling program to empower business people at Shell.
Well, thank you so much, John and Rob, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be with you, and also to represent and tell a little bit more about Shell's story and our journey around low code and citizen development. As for me personally, just to give a brief introduction, I've spent the last 2 decades really leading projects and development teams. And in my time at Shell, I've held different roles, from being, for example, the head of mobile application development. And more recently, so prior to this role, I was the head of our digital engineering team within our R&D department. So I think during my time, especially when I think we'll call it the low code revolution. So as we were taking those shifts towards agile and applying those lean methods and product and design thinking, that user focus, for me, I've always enjoyed working on the more human side of development and design and change management. So when this role came along, I mean, for me, it was really a beautiful thing, because citizen development not only fascinates me because you're trying to take a number of those techniques and bring them, but also it brings you into contact with so many wonderful people across the company and beyond. So being in this role now officially for almost 4 years, I'll talk a little bit more about the program, which has been going for a little bit longer, and the genesis around that. But again, real pleasure to be with you here today.
Thrilled to have you. Rob, back over to you.
Yeah. So listen, as John mentioned, Paul, John and I have been at this for a while, and I would say, 8-9 years ago, when we were kind of pulling this kind of low code and process automation stuff together, we had this vision, and this vision was everybody would be involved in the development process. We would be able to, enable business users to have much more of a role in business optimization, but also get to that kind of long tail of digitization. And And we've put out assets with analysis.tech that says, look, most of you are stuck, right? Most of you are, you're using low code. It's great. The products work really well, but you haven't gotten to this vision of the long tail of citizen development. And why is everybody stuck? Then we come back to, well, not everybody's stuck. These are the firms that aren't stuck. There's A, B, C, and there's Shell. And my comment is always, well, if we can name them all, and if Shell is always the first one to come to mind, then obviously not everybody is picking up on the full value of this. I'd love if you could share with our guests kind of how things started at Shell and what is the state of the program today.
Yeah, happy to do that, Rob. And I think also it's been a pleasure to talk to many other companies, businesses, industries, those in education, researching this, and consultancy as well, because it's certainly something that's relatively new, and we need to continue to explore and develop this together. So I could name many other companies that I know, and I'm sure can share some successes as well. But if we go back and talk about the Shell journey, I firstly have to make a call out to all of our citizens, because without them, without their tenaciousness, without the time that they invest and put in, I wouldn't be here today in this role and in this capacity. But, you talked about the work around 9-10 years or so in terms of your work. And I think for Shell and the program, we go back to around 2018-19. And I think that's where we saw the shift. There'd already been, and there's many tools and technologies that have been in place that people have been using to support automation, to support development as well. But some of the predecessors to low code were forms-based technology, people taking simple forms and digitizing those, and basic in terms of process and process improvement. But the general user, I'll say it, the office worker, the person at a site was limited in their tool choices. So let's say a desktop set. And that's where we started to see a number of our teams at that point in time start to use that early wave of low code technology to create value. So this at the time was in our products and chemicals domain. So think about plant, think about operations, and then think about a world where lots of things are on forms, clipboards, paper, people working across different geographies as well, having to carry tools and equipment. Really, there's an opportunity there to digitize, and people really grasp that. And I have to say, if you look about a similar time, so 2010, 2020, that era was in and around digitalization. So you're going to see improvements in mobile technology, right? From forms to mobile. You're going to see improvements in network technology overall to support the performance that's needed. And again, then you've got cloud. So you've got that advent. There's certain ingredients that really came together to allow our business users to really make use of some of these particular tools. And at that point in time, when we saw this wellspring in these assets around these developments, our CIO at that time had really a decision to make, whether to try and squash it, right? This is another shadow IT. It's going to be the expanse of more tools, or really nurture it. And thankfully at that time, our CIO took the view that he and a team would look to nurture it. And that was really around quantifying the risk, about putting some of the early guardrails in to treat it like a small experiment where we evaluate, this wellspring. But that's also where the term came along, coining this DIY, or do it yourself, which lent itself so very well to lots of our engineers, who like to tinker, who like to work with such tools and experiment. So off the back of that, we made an early investment around a project or a program. And that then developed out some of the early training, the governance, the handrails, which ultimately then became the center of expertise. So we went through a small project into a program, and we carefully worked through the contours of this to evolve it into what it is today. And since you asked, where are we today? DIY is going very strong. It's in its fifth year. We've got over 200 coaches worldwide. So from Australia to Argentina, in every part of our business, from trading to finance to engineering, through to legal, right, or our corporate functions. So we have around 4,000 citizens who are supporting and solving problems in their particular business or area. And we continue to evolve with that and support not only their development, but the contours of change and risk as the area is moving at pace. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense of where we were at the time, how it's developed overall and where we are now on our journey.
That sounds great. Thank you, Paul. John?
So 4,000 out of a total employee population of?
Well in excess, if you include contractors and teams, well in excess of 100,000 worldwide. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So you've got, Shell is an enormous company, and as you pointed out, Paul, there are different phases of the different businesses that Shell participates in. You've got engineers, you've got office workers, etc. Does Shell have kind of a definition of someone who is a citizen developer? Are there certain qualities or characteristics or skills that person has to have, and how do you recognize them? Getting to 4,000 was a bunch of work. People will volunteer, but I imagine you did some nurturing as well. Maybe talk about that a little bit, if you could. How do you recognize these folks? Who are they?
Yeah, happy to. So maybe take the sort of industry definition of citizen developer. You look at business professionals using low-code tools to solve problems and generate value. And I think, principally we started this by recognizing that the citizen developer is someone outside. So it's a designation of someone outside the IT function. Now, I would say that blurs a little bit because IT people use these tools as well. And we use them for also doing development, solving problems and professional development at the same time. We'll come on to a little bit around governance, but ultimately, after a period of time, we opened up one of our platforms to the organization. So that then presents the opportunity for anybody within the context of the tools that they can use and deploy to actually pick up these tools with support from the IT function, with some training, to actually solve a problem that they have that's material to either them, maybe it's in and around their own personal productivity, or something for their team or department. And that obviously in time has continued to grow. So we believe that anybody within the company has the qualities to be a citizen developer. But of course, within that, there is some core ingredients as well. They have to get some training, get some learning, have a problem to be solved, get that coaching and support, and work within some of the contours and risk parameters that we provide. In terms of how we nurture them, yeah, I mean, we've been developing that proposition for a number of years now, but I think first and foremost important to say that there's a lot of pull from our business and businesses to actually do this. People who want to make a difference every day and add value, and also from their business leaders, whether they're the team leaders, the managers of functions, because in so many ways, isn't digital just part of nearly everything that we do, right? So it's an integral part. And I think what we've done over time is really looked at putting the citizen at the center of everything that we do. We try to make it easy to onboard, easy to use some of the tools to follow some of the user journeys, but also to provide the tooling, the support, the training, and also within our incredible community of coaches worldwide who are there every day to answer some of the questions that they have. And beyond that, whether it's through a boot camp, whether it's a hackathon, it's really recognizing their work and the contribution that they make and the difference that they make, but also making it creative. A creative process is not just about the tools, it's about the process, it's about the collaboration, and also making it fun at the same time. So there's a number of core ingredients, but it is a community-based approach. We have our center of expertise, we have our coaches, and we continue to support that community in its growth to make sure we're focused with support from business leaders on some of those North Stars.
That's great. when one of the interesting topics is about language, about terminology. I can't tell you how many business people I've talked to and said, would you be happy if you were called a citizen developer? And they say, no, we don't want to be I'm not a developer. Even though, you know, they are, as you point out, as part of their work, they may be contributing to automation. So have you found that the term is a little iffy for your business people?
You know, John, not so much. I've not really encountered issues in and around citizen developer. I mean, our business professionals have their day job and they have their titles. So whether it's going to be an engineer or whether it's going to be a trader or someone in, you know, our customer service center, so they have their core job. And you know, being close to the process, being close to the data, understanding the pain points. This is another toolkit that enables them to fulfill their objectives within their business and function. I will say, however, so a couple of years ago, we extended the citizen developer into the realm of the citizen data scientist. And I think we had a few more, you know, more reactions there, I would say, around being coined a citizen data scientist. So we've retracted that somewhat. A data scientist likes to be a data scientist, and we get that and understand that. Maybe over time, the notion of citizen will be dropped. I think as we see people continue to just get more familiar with the tooling and the platforms and become better and more sophisticated in their own journeys, they're just a developer. But I think, you know, they have a day job, and we've not seen too much, you know, in terms of, or by way of a reaction around app and, you know, automated development.
That makes me happy because I can't think of an alternative. Over to you, Rob. Thank you, Paul.
So let's rein it in before we get to the concept of the citizen brain surgeon. So, so folks, look, Lowdown on Low Code is brought to you by analysis.tech. If you want to interact more with John and myself on the topics of low code or digital process automation, you want to talk to our chief economist about how to justify these programs and how to measure return on investment. We can hook you up with Andy Bartels if you want to talk about the history of RPA and talk to a man who has a true love of low code and hatred of code. We'll hook you up with Francis Carden. We've got Dave Marcus with a great background in robotic process automation, but also in digital process automation. And Ryan Duguid, who's architected some of the premier products on the market from a vendor side. Hit analysis.tech to find out more about us. Okay, back to our programming here. Paul, there's a piece of this that I think is important for the audience to understand, which is there's this concept, maybe a misconception of folks. Just roll it out, and everybody's going to use this. Roll the balls out, and our kids are going to have a ball, and who knows what kind of mayhem will ensue. Obviously, there's a significant IT role in this. There are specific identified roles within IT at Shell that allow this to happen and happen smoothly. Could you walk us through that side of it?
Yeah, happy to, Rob. I think, you know, first and foremost, our IT plays a role in ensuring that, you know, we keep safe. There's risk. And overall, in terms of citizen development, from an IT technology and risk point of view, we manage as IT the strategy. But when we look at then citizen development, which is, you know, business people adopting these technologies, that's very much with key inputs, insights from, you know, our VPs and our leaders. So we have an executive governance body in and around DIY that provides, of course, the inputs representing their particular businesses, and each, you know, business is going to have certain different needs. They're going to be at different points of maturity, and communities as well. If we look at then IT's role within this, it's around managing those boundaries of safety, right? It's about making sure that our businesses can operate safely and providing the guardrails and the training and support. But let's also recognize, you know, within our framework, our code of conduct, the way in which we operate as a business, as an organization, that the business has responsibility too. They're going to build these solutions. You know, they need to own them. They need to maintain them. When there's change, they need to manage that change as well. And they need to manage the portfolio. And you made a really good point. I think we're going through somewhat in this year 4 or 5 an inflection point where indeed there's growth and there's been some sprawl. And, that's a concern for any IT manager because it gives us potentially more things those IT managers to manage. But I think also from our business standpoint, our businesses have also learned that they don't want another thing, right? They want the right tools. They want to manage their portfolio for their business as well. So we've seen more and more in terms of our businesses taking, control of their portfolio and their applications and, even certifying them as well for use within their business, which is a great point from the standpoint of maturity. As for how the COE is constructed, you can consider we're a small team, but we're a microcosm of parts of the IT function because you need many ingredients to do this. You need your information risk management team very, very close to this. You need architecture very close to this. You need your pro developers close to this because who's your best coach? Who knows how to learn these features before they get rolled out? Ultimately, this is a change program. So we have a transformational change advisor who helps us with that and learning, right? So you're drawing on different parts of the organization, right, to make this a successful program, but also making sure that the business very much take account. So it only gives you a bit of a sense around some of the roles, but we have to be very clear what the COE does, what a coach does for a particular business, and what is the responsibility of the citizen. When I create something for me, but especially when you create something for others, you're on the hook, right? You've got users, you've got customers. So you need to really be thinking about that and making sure that people are educated on the contours of risk, the tools, the accountability, and operate within, the confines of our code of conduct. Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, would we love to talk to your transformational change manager. John?
Wow. I was just thinking, so Paul's talking and I'm just thinking, that was what we
interview.
That was what we envisioned, was software was everybody's business. And if the business groups are taking responsibility for their own portfolios, boy, I think there it is. It's very exciting. So Paul, of course, all this, you talked about the investment that the company made and continues to make. Investments have to be justified. So let's say the CFO shows up to your office. Paul, how's it going? And you tell him about all the great things and the growth. And the CFO, of course, is going to say, why does it matter? What is it getting us? This is a significant investment. How does Shell justify this?
It's a great question, John. And also in the exchange with other companies, we share our views on this particular topic. I think, first and foremost, I talked about our executive steering and governance, and we've evolved our KPIs and key measures, but part of it's around value and growth, and part of it is around risk and compliance. So we bring that together. Like any investment in technology, you want to manage as an investment plan. You want to have those key measures, and you want to make sure that you're seeing a really good return, a great return. And again, when we go all the way back, it was about putting small investment in, building and measuring and learning as part of those particular cycles. But I think there's one thing we've been very fortunate to have in Shell, and that's being able to hook into our business, let's say, process or ways in which they record value. So many of our businesses have operational improvements, lean, continuous improvements, where they have tools and processes in place. And what we did was very much hooked in by the API, the programmable interface, into the tool to put the label in there for DIY, so these tools can be applied within the context of some of the things that the businesses were already doing. So making incremental improvements, measuring that, and having their own way of measuring the value and return. So rather than creating a cottage industry around this, it was a good move to actually just reflect what the business is actually doing and have their support and advocacy to it, because that goes a really, really long way. I think the other side of this is, though, some of the less tangible benefits. We've had numerous conversations around, the metrics and the value and the cost takeout, deferment, cost avoidance. But it's also to recognize again that this is a transformation, and that this enables, you mentioned it, that our business people can get to that long tail of value that IT cannot always get to, because we're prioritizing on maybe the most value. And with people who can make those improvements every day, also that comes with intangible benefits. I talked about that team lead, that manager who wants to have an employee value proposition, wants to see their young talent and their mature talent, grow and develop and make a difference. So it's as much about the financial benefits as it is around then those that are more transformative. And if we can have people who can make a difference, that pays back. If we can have teams that can solve a problem, at a point in time rather than have to wait, that is driving speed and efficiency. And I think ultimately, if that all amounts up and you've got a workforce that's able to do that in a way where there's control, right? Where there's not a sprawl, but they're managing that, then you're creating agility, right? Within those departments and functions to pivot and to persevere. And I think that's one of the things that from our business standpoint, they really value around the program and when we talk about DIY.
I think I just want to highlight, I think he just made a really important point. We commonly will say that the people at the coalface, the people who are in the process, know what needs to be done. They know what automation needs to be built. They know how processes need to be updated, etc. And someone that's sitting in a central organization like IT, how could you know? But I think you also made the point, they know where the value is, and they know what it's worth spending money on and spending employee time on. And I think it's an important point, Rob, that we need to begin to highlight a little. Anyway, back over to you.
Yeah, I do. Okay, so that was great, Paul. Thank you so much. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Great session. Please remember to tune in next week. Hit that subscribe button so you don't forget, and we'll see you back next week on next week's episode of Lowdown on Low Code, which will have Paul again talking about all these great topics. Thanks, everybody.